Well, good morning. The time being 9 a.m, I declare open the general meeting for the Gladstone Regional Council for Tuesday, the 15th of July, 2025. We have no apologies, councillors. However, we do have Councillor Churchill teamsing in online. Thank you, Councillor Churchill. The next item on the agenda is messages of condolence. Do we have any messages of condolence? Yes, Councillor Cameron.
You might mention that Glenn is down in Melbourne at the moment, I believe, after the passing of his wife's father. max. So I would like to offer, on behalf of the council and all your colleagues, our sincere condolences to yourself, Sue, and your family, and hope all goes well for you, mate. Thank you.
I turned that off. Yes, Mayor's statement is the next item on the agenda. And of course, on Wednesday, the 2nd of July, we had the official opening of Hydrogen Park Gladstone. For those who wasn't sure what I said the official opening of Hydrogen Park Gladstone. That's right, hydrogen is happening in the Gladstone region. In fact, it's been operating for 6 months and delivering up to a 10% hydrogen blend into the industrial, residential and commercial market. The only project of its type doing that in the country, and it's happening right here as part of our hydrogen ecosystem. And just to be sure, in case you weren't sure, Sumitomo recently met with Gladstone Regional Council as well, and of course their project is powering ahead, their hydrogen project is powering ahead at the Rio Tinto site, where they will help decarbonise the Rio Tinto alumina refinery and ultimately Queensland Alumina as well in their calcination process. Another world first happening right here in Gladstone. So there's lots of talk about hydrogen in Gladstone. We're not a one-trick pony. We've got a lot more in our community than just hydrogen, but there's certainly a number of hydrogen projects happening. And of course, the Queensland Government have spent considerable funds on building a pipeline from the Fitzroy River, from the Rookwood Weir to Gladstone, which will open next year, which will deliver a lot of water to our state development area. Of course, a project funded by the state, and the water users will be industrial users, not Gladstone Regional Council ratepayers. So it's fantastic to see that investment by the Queensland Government, and of course I'm sure they'll be looking for customers for that water because the ratepayers of Gladstone won't be paying for that pipeline. We had our special budget meeting on Thursday the 3rd of July, and I'm very pleased to say that's just an average general rate increase of just 2.5%, which is fantastic work. So again, well done to Mark and the team. And of course, our general managers and councillors as well, just an average rate increase of just 2.5% on a $396 million budget and a $105 million capital works program. And of course, one of the exciting projects out of that is from the 1st of July next year. For those who currently receive a bin service, we will be implementing a green lead bin service, a garden organics service, from the 1st of July next year. And we'll be working with our operations team, no doubt, and our CEO to make sure that we deliver that in a sustainable way. So we aim for the urban centres first of Gladstone, Boyne, Tannum, Calliope and Agnes Water, and we take into consideration that some of our services that have a bin service right now, like in River Ranch and places that are on acreage, may not necessarily need the garden organics bin. So as we outwork that contract over the next 12 months, we'll make sure that those who need the service get the service, and that those who don't need the service don't necessarily have to have the service. So that'll be something our team will work out for the next 12 months, but we will start delivering green bins, particularly to the urban centres, from January next year. On the 6th of July to the 13th of July, we have been celebrating NAIDOC Week. Started with the flag raising ceremony at the front of the council chambers. We had the service expo at Phillip Street, the Elders Brunch, and of course the NAIDOC March. And there was a NAIDOC ball as well, so I'm sure everyone enjoyed their NAIDOC Week festivities. On Thursday the 10th of July, as I said, we're not a one-trick pony in the Gladstone region. Councillors, we attended the Alpha HPA project, which is building their commercialisation of their plant. Obviously, they've got the demonstration plant happening in Gladstone. Of course, they'll be producing and are producing high-purity alumina, which is a very well sought-after project and product in globally and here in Gladstone. I'd like to thank Councillor Patrick and Davis, who attended the 40 Years of Tourism celebration, Agnes Water 1770, on the same day. Fantastic to see, obviously, particularly around the Murgard family and everything they've done in Agnes Water 1770, from Lark Tours and marinas and everything else in terms of looking after their community. It goes way back to their parents, and congratulations to them for celebrating 40 years of tourism in the Gladstone region. And just yesterday, I was in Rockhampton and Yeppoon as part of Operation Talisman Saver. Gladstone, Rockhampton and Livingston are partnering together to prove to the Queensland and Australian Government and to the world that we are central to defence. And of course, as I said, not a one-trick pony in the Gladstone region. We want to make sure that we also have a defence presence here in Gladstone as well. So we're really looking forward to seeing that activity over the next few weeks, and making sure the federal government understand that the Gladstone region and central Queensland are really powering ahead when it comes to providing space and availability and support for our defence industry. Upcoming in the Gladstone region, we have Luminous, which is from the 17th to the 19th of July, just $5 per ticket, so get online and get your tickets now. Under $5 is free. And tickets will also be available at the gate via a QR code, but I recommend you get your tickets early because you don't want to be lining up at the gate and getting tickets through a QR code if you don't have to. You can get them online, as I said, jump the queues and get them by our website. The Boyne Valley 50 is this Saturday. As I mentioned previously, Councillor McClintock is doing a 50-kilometre event, and I'm trying desperately hard to drop out of the 23 and do the 12, but we'll see how we go. I've heard. We'll see how we go. Popcorn EOI is out for food vendors, store holders, artists and authors, so applications close on at 9 a.m. on the 5th of August. So if you're wanting to be involved in PopCon this year, another popular event at the Gladstone Entertainment Convention Centre, jump online now. And I want to wrap up by thanking Kay Kirkman, who retired on Monday the 14th of July after 45 years at Education Queensland. Well done, Kay. On behalf of the Gladstone region, we thank you for your service and we wish you all the very best in the next stage. There's no doubt retirement, but you've deserved it and well done. Thank you, councillors. The next item on the agenda is the confirmation of the minutes. G2.1, the confirmation of the general meeting minutes for the 1st of July. I move it, please. Thank you, Councillor Wagner and Councillor Holzheimer. All in favour? Carried. And the confirmation of the special budget meeting, G2.2, for the 3rd of July. Move it, please. Thank you, Councillor Churchill and Councillor Davis. All in favour? And that's carried as well. We have no deputations this morning, so we'll move into the first item on the agenda, which is the LGAQ conference motions and attendance. I'll hand over to the General Manager of People and Strategy, Carly Quinn. And welcome Kim Markson to the table as well.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors. Yes, I'm joined by Kim Markson, our Manager of Strategy and Improvement, who has done a lot of great work with councillors and officers across the business in developing these motions. So today we present 3 proposed motions for submission to the 2025 Local Government Association of Queensland Annual Conference to be held in October on the Gold Coast. The conference is one of the most important advocacy opportunities that we have each year. It brings councils right across Queensland together to debate key issues and influence the state government's policy. Importantly, it gives us the chance to ensure our community's voice is heard on matters that affect them. We're putting forward 3 motions that are strongly anchored in community benefit. The first motion is around Planning Act Amendment Bill. So it asks the state government to adequately support councils to meet potential new responsibilities under the Planning Act. It's about setting our community up for success and change that is fair, supported and planned with the community in mind and without costing them in additional rates and impact to existing services. Our second motion is around wastewater infrastructure. The second motion addresses challenges within wastewater infrastructure upgrades. We're asking for a realistic, staged approach that recognises existing infrastructure, it provides consistent funding for sustainable solutions, and develops a compliance pathway that balances both the cost and the environmental responsibilities so that, again, our ratepayers are not having to burden the costs. Motion number 3 is around Council Register of Interests, and the third motion asks for a fair review of Council Register of Interests framework. We support transparency and public trust in council. We also know that current requirements can discourage community members from stepping forward to serve their communities due to privacy and personal safety risks. We're calling for a framework that protects safety and privacy, encourages participation in local government, and upholds the trust that community places in its elected members. If supported, these motions will be submitted by the 28th of July deadline and they'll be debated at the conference, and if passed, they will help shape LGAQ's advocacy agenda for the following 5 years. This gives us a powerful platform to keep pushing the changes that our community needs. The Mayor will be attending in his capacity as LGAQ President, and we'll need at least one other councillor to represent Gladstone and speak to our motions at the conference, so we're also seeking your endorsement of the delegates to attend the conference, and the budget allows for attendance.
Thank you. There's no conflict of interest here because my involvement will be funded by LGAQ, but there'll need to be 2 councillors because I won't be able to speak to Gladstone Regional Council motions. Yep. And there's no cost for those 2 delegates to council. It's included in our membership of LGAQ. We can send our servers as well, but I'll leave that to the boardroom to determine. Any questions for our General Manager, please? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I'm very happy with the proposed motions. So, do we I guess the officer's recommendation is just the whole one thing. We can't split it into two to then, I
Well,
guess-
point 2 is to
Yeah.
appoint the councillors. Do you want to
Yeah.
just move the motion for 1 first and then discuss that
or
separately?
maybe if that might be easier, so we go on to, or whichever.
Or is there, let's find out if there's
Yeah.
more who would like to attend the conference and be a delegate.
The thing is, we have a council meeting during that time,
Yeah.
so we probably need to discuss if we will have enough people, because if, obviously, Mayor, you going, and I'm happy to stay if we need it for quorum, but if we're not going to have it, I would also like to go.
Yeah.
So, but
We can change the date of the council meeting. That's not an issue, as long as we have plenty of notice. It's in October. We can either cancel the council meeting or defer the council meeting if we don't have a quorum. It depends on what interest there is in attending conference. So you're interested in, and Councillor McClintock, is there other interest? Councillor Wagner? And anyone else? Glenn's not? Well, that's 3, that'll be 4. That means we'd have 5 councillors. Would make it very difficult to host a meeting if anyone had a conflict of interest or lose a quorum. So I would suggest potentially we don't have a council meeting that day. We,
if we're happy to send this many,
no, don't give up. No, don't withdraw. Yeah, well.
I'm
yeah, no,
happy
you've
to
gotta
stay
come,
then.
Yeah.
But to send, that seems like a lot.
Well, you're only sending 3 because I'm already there, and you're 2 delegates are covered, so it's only the cost would be for 1. And don't.
No, you're right, I'll just.
I'm happy to stay till we can have the meeting, like I said before.
No, I'll do it, you're right.
No, you pulled out last time.
For next year.
You said that last year.
Yeah, I know.
No, well, that's okay. I will cover for. That was the. Sorry.
Sorry, Councillor
is-
Cameron.
Excuse me.
We can have both. We can have the attendance of these councillors there. We can defer a meeting to another one in that same month. I can't see an issue.
No, me either.
Mr. Mayor, if we're talking about additional councillors over and above what's budgeted for, it may put you in conflict. So you may want to leave the room.
Good call. Yeah, good
So
call.
therefore, it may make sense to split the
Yeah.
resolution as Councillor Muska
Let's do that.
suggested.
Yeah, good call.
Well, I'll be happy to move the motions.
Move the motion, recommendation 1, seconded Councillor Holzheimer. Any further discussion? They're very straightforward and they're good motions. All in favour? It's carried. And then I'll hand over to you to discuss item 2.
Okay, great. And I should be okay, even the fact that I'll be going. I'm one of the ones going. Okay, so the second motion will be Part B. Number 2. So authorise Councillor. Well, at the moment we have Councillor Wagner, Councillor McClintock, and myself. Let's go to Councillor Holzheimer.
I just simply wanted to move the motion to accept that we have 3 councillors, yourself, Councillor McClintock and Councillor Wagner, to attend, because I think it's really valuable opportunity for all of us, and if anybody should be going, it is probably Councillor Wagner, because she hasn't attended any conferences. So I would expect one of you two to actually give up your place if it was a budget conflict. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'm happy to not go, as I said at the very beginning. So, is there a seconder for this motion?
I'm happy to second.
Okay, so the motion is that there's 3 councillors going, which is not the original motion. So, but Councillor Holzheimer has provided a justification. So, is there any other comments or questions?
Oh, just exactly what Councillor Holzheimer's just said. I'm not desperately need to go, but I'm very happy to go and attend and do the things. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think Councillor Wagner should be there. So, but also I don't see an issue with deferring the general meeting to make this happen. It's not a big budget. This conference is about Obviously, there's a networking part of it and an element of connecting with peers through there, but there's also a lot of great information through there that helps you shape the job that you do. It's a really great conference and opportunity. I know Councillor Wagner didn't get a chance to get there last year, but also these motions and the opportunity to share some of the things that matter to our ratepayers and to our residents, that the costs that we have to incur and the advocacy around that. So definitely a valid and valuable thing to be a part of. Like I said, don't have to go to make it 3 people, but I also definitely agree that Wagner should be there, but I'm happy to go, either or. Happy with either.
Okay, Councillor Churchill, do you want to say anything? No? Okay, so the motion here is that we increase the number of councillors going to LGAQ to 3. Can I see who's in favour?
Sorry, just checking, do we have the reasons identified there adequately? I'm just conscious we have just set the budget and we have identified councillors wanted to go, so I guess I'm also curious, is this something you want to address on a year-by-year basis, or is it something we need to look at increasing the number that are budgeted for to attend this conference, if that's something that I'm hearing you consider is important? So, first question is, do we
Sorry,
have
Councillor
sufficient
Wagner?
reasons?
Yeah, look, I'm not, if this is what was decided as budget, but honestly, I'm happy to just pull out, because then you've got 2, and that's what I'd like to do. I just pull out.
We have a motion that needs to be voted on, yeah. And just for reasoning, I have captured valuable networking and learning opportunity for councillors and an ability to advocate for ratepayers and community.
Yeah, and I'll say we probably definitely will talk about maybe adding one more to the next budget, or at least considering it. But thank you for making that point. Councillor Churchill?
Just a quick comment from previous discussions, and perhaps it might have been the previous council, was that we would always send 2 councillors, and if we hosted one within the Gladstone region, and we've hosted a few now, that all of us would attend. And I'm not sure whether that was enshrined in policy or a previous decision, but that's probably consistent with where Madam CEO is coming from.
Yes. Okay, well, let's go back to anyone else has any comments or questions? Councillor Patrick?
My comment is to Councillor Wagner to really encourage her to go down there.
But if we decided this in our budget, which we've just done, then I think we need to, and I'm happy for others to go. They do a great job, and there's always next year. So I'm happy to put it out there for next year. So, yeah, I don't want to be...
Can I go back to Councillor Holzheimer? Are you still happy with your motion?
Yes, happy to move forward with that motion. I see that it's approximately $3,000, I believe, in addition to what we had allocated. So do not actually think that it's a significant investment, considering what the community gets back for that investment with sending 3 councillors as well. So happy to continue with my motion. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Davies, you happy to continue to second it? Councillor Cameron?
Yes, I feel that we're sort of forcing this on Michelle. She's expressed a desire that she doesn't need to go, and she's conscious of the budget. So,
Okay.
we've got a motion on the table, we've got to vote on that, and I will be voting against to support Michelle's wishes.
Okay. I just wanted to say this again. I raised this saying that I will go if we still have to run the meeting. That's not a problem. So I was happy to not go in the first place myself, as we would then be able to have a quorum to have our meeting. So, Councillor Churchill?
Just thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to ask a question to clarify.
Yeah.
Are we actually moving a motion to tell an elected member to go to a conference that they're wishing to not attend or withdraw from?
Yeah,
Is that
that's
the
right.
case?
Well, it looks like at the moment, yes. So I'm happy to withdraw. If I was to withdraw to stay and run the meeting, would you be able to go, Councillor Wagner?
No, I've offered, and
I
I'm
hadn't
sorry
finished,
that
Madam Chair. I
Yes,
see a dangerous
thank you.
precedence in this, in sending someone somewhere to do something where they don't wish to go to. That's,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry, I see a
Yes.
dangerous precedence with this, and I understand the circumstances, but you're actually asking somebody to go somewhere to do something, or you're directing them by motion to do something that they are respectfully not wishing to attend.
Yes, you're very right, Councillor Churchill. This reads authorised councillor, so that's, I guess, not demanding them, but I go back to Councillor Holzheimer.
Happy to withdraw my motion. I would just like to make a point that I consistently see Councillor Wagner step back because she doesn't want to inconvenience others within the boardroom. So that is actually the motivation originally with supporting the motion, because I am concerned that she consistently puts herself on and removes herself from these things because of not wanting to be an inconvenience or to create too much of an issue with things. So that's, I suppose, where I was coming from, but happy to withdraw my motion and change it if I'm able to support Councillor McClintock and Councillor Muscat in attending. Thanks.
It is. I guess, sorry, CEO, do you want to?
No, so we'll just go through the process, so that motion's being withdrawn.
Motion's been withdrawn, but what I'm hearing is Councillor Holzheimer has just moved a new motion.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Wagner. So all in favour? Anyone against?
Can I get an understanding? The motion's been withdrawn, and now what's the motion, Madam Chair?
The motion is Councillor Holzheimer has nominated Councillor McClintock and myself to go to LGAQ.
Okay. Yep.
Anyone against? No. Okay. No one's against. So that motion from Councillor Holzheimer has been carried, and I think the item's finished, and we can welcome Mayor back in. Thank you.
Deputy. All right. Move on. Next item on the agenda is the G4.2 Agnes Water Drainage Study. Oh, welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Mayor. Morning, councillors. I've got with me Niels Kloppers here, who's our Manager of Asset Planning. And today we're asking for your endorsement for the Agnes Creek Drainage Study. The study area consists of the Agnes Creek and Roundhill Creek catchments, with the focus being on the urban area of Agnes Water located within the Agnes Creek catchment. A range of data sources were collected, including LiDAR and bathymetric data, and reviewed including previous reports and models, rainfall data, topographic data, land use data, and stormwater infrastructure data. This also included site inspections in the area. Something called a watershed-bounded network model, a hydrologic model, was developed for the two catchments, and that covered an area of approximately 110 square kilometres, consisting of 154 sub-catchments. And that model simulates the runoff that occurs from rainfall. There was also a hydraulic model which simulated how floodwaters move through the catchment area, and that was also created. Design rainfall events were simulated in the watershed-bounded network model and something called a two-flow model using the Australian rainfall and runoff, the ARR 2019 version 4.2 guidelines. The flood results were mapped, including peak flood depth, peak flood level, peak velocity depth, peak hydraulic hazard, and peak hydraulic risk. A classification of riverine versus overland flooding was undertaken for the 1% AEP event. That is the event that will eventually be amended into the planning scheme. We've also included in the report for you, for your information relating to the shared socio-economic pathway scenario that officers have chosen to best represent the impact of climate change, and that is the SSP 327. Now that's described as the most likely worst case scenario, so it is a cautious selection. But given current socio-economic pathways and indeed the political climate, particularly in the US, we believe it's the right option to take at the moment. In terms of the impact on lots in the area, we're pleased to say that around 600 properties actually have a reduced risk due to this calibrated model than was there previously. And this will clear that logjam which has been experienced by development services with the lack of a fully calibrated model that they could rely on and considering flood hazard for new developments in the catchment. Happy to hear any questions.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for doing this. I think the residents and the building industry and Agnes Water particularly be very happy about this recommendation today. Councillors, questions? Councillor Wagner.
Yeah, look, the study looks great. Obviously, it's probably a little bit out of my scope, but I suppose, and I've read it, but yeah, the questions would be, in terms of if we support this modelling, which is great, and it's our latest modelling, how is that going to impact on our planning applications down there? Are we looking at having some sort of standard overlay now that we can apply, or will this help developers? Will reduce paperwork, I suppose.
Yeah, 100%. What the situation was that without a calibrated model on which to rely, developers were then required to undertake lot-specific drainage studies, which were expensive and required RPEQs to undertake that work. The challenge that they had, even in securing RPEQs to do that, was there wasn't a catchment-wide calibrated model on which they could rely, and we now have that. What will happen between now and a future amendment of the planning scheme, when we do put that 1% AEP amended into the planning scheme, is that we will be able to, the maps will be available on our online services. Development services will be able to use those maps in reference to planning applications, and they will be able to resume exemption certificates for single lot developments.
So that's for the lots that obviously were designated as now not being like a flood issue.
Correct, yes.
Well, that's a positive thing.
Yeah. And further, the modelling will assist things like minimum floor levels for other lots as well. So it's Councillor Cameron's nodding, he knows how.
So that'll be help when
you,
I suppose, building something to making sure that it's above the height,
absolutely,
or raising them or whatever. In terms of when the study was done, did this take into account? I know that they've done it all different scenarios, but have they looked at the peak disaster time where we've got, king tides backing up water and extreme like cyclones and a lot of runoff and that sort of thing? Does this modelling take into account those, the extreme situations that have occurred?
yes.
Okay,
That's
excellent.
a short answer for a long question,
Yes.
but yes.
Oh, yes, sorry. Oh, no, I was trying to think, because it's been done. So how long was this study done for, over what period, or did it just look at desktop research?
Looks at desktop research, there's also site visits undertaken, and looking at the catchment area and the lot area information as well. So the study was undertaken over a 9-month period this year, but what it does is it predicts, as opposed to look at previous. Obviously it uses the historical data that we have and previous planning studies that were undertaken, and then uses that water-bounded network model and the two-flow to predict what would happen given certain scenarios.
Yeah.
And the scenarios then are informed by that SSP that we choose to say, well, how bad is climate change going to get? How bad will events happen in the future? And that's what we're modelling, and that's how that works. Does that make sense?
Mm. And there's a couple of properties there between the road and the beach there that do tend to be on a sand base that get a lot of water inundation during those extreme conditions. Was there anything in the report that showed just what the impact would be on those in the future, because they're very close to the beach?
So there's a difference between a coastal hazard and the drainage hazards that we have in the stormwater runoff. But every lot within the catchment, 110 square kilometres, has been mapped and will be
Okay.
available on online services.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, and comprehensive report. Support it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Before we go to questions from other councillors, could we, for those watching online, could we put the maps, or just maybe could slowly scroll through? I know. Can we just put one up and then just leave one and then slowly scroll through? I've got a few questions coming, just so that people watching online, particularly Agnes Water 1770, who have been waiting for this report for a while, and it's not an easy thing to do. As you say, it takes 9 months, and that we've had severe weather events down there that have helped, I guess, provide data input to this as well. So it's far more than just a desktop study, because we've lived it. And the residents of Agnes Water 1770, Baffle Creek, Rosedale and others have lived the weather events, but particularly here in Agnes 1770, or Agnes Water, this is going to be a very welcomed result.
If I can, Mayor, just in
Yes.
terms of the maps that we're potentially showing just now, those are quite clunky and big aerial maps.
Yeah.
What the public will be able to interact with is our online services. They can go onto our website, click on online mapping, put their address in, and they'll get the information at their lot level.
But even better. Thanks, Mark. Thank you. Councillor McClintock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You kind of answered my first question, I think. You said there's about 600 less properties affected. Is that net, or is there some that are now going to be affected that weren't before, and a certain number less, and 600 total less in a number? Does that make sense? Or is there certain
I'll defer to Niels on this.
areas that are now going to be affected that weren't before, I guess, is where my question...
I think in short, the answer is there's 637 that will be less impacted. In the previous study, it was 1,637, so it's about 637 less impacted.
Great. So for the most part, it should be less people on that one there. My other question was, obviously this in the report does state about the simplicities that it creates for developers and getting those approvals and those side of things. I note when I did a little bit of reading around over the last couple of days that these are also used for increasing premiums on people's personal homes. How do we foresee that affecting our community? And I note that it's not put in one of the, as a risk that we've identified, that we've actually created an easier path for developers, which is great, and we do want to make sure that we're supporting growth in a really healthy way, but also we don't want to put that burden back onto residents and homeowners by increasing their premiums for 1 in 100 year events, obviously. It's something we don't have total control over, I realise, but is that a real possibility?
It's an interesting question. It's a consequence of what we've done. Now what we've done is we've not done this just to make developers' life area. This is the 4th or 5th drainage study that we've done, which is funded for the reasons included in the report, which allows us to look at flood risk management. Now that looks after our infrastructure and people's homes.
Mm-hmm.
We are obliged through regulation to provide this information to the insurance industry. If they choose to increase premiums, then that is, as you say, out with our control. But what it is this is articulating and calibrating the risk. So as you say, there's 600 properties that are now lower risk, so they should see a reduction in premiums. Could.
That's exactly right, yeah. No.
Not sure that's how the insurance market works.
Yes. No, and that's not up to us. I totally get that. And I guess I get a little bit of comfort out of the answer to your first question, which was the 600 less. We're not increasing the number of affected families, I guess, in that process. The only last question that I had was within the report, it stated basically a significant lack of historical information or accuracy of information. They had to use a lot of photos and sort of collate data from random places. And I thought that was going to be very historic, as in the 70s or 50s and stuff that they didn't have really good data for, but it was 2012, 2014. Have we got better processes in place to capture this data going forwards now?
That's something else that Niels can talk to.
Yeah, so we did some, not research, but we went back and asked for more information, and that was information that we was able to get. But we'll look at future processes to make sure that we put structures in place to get more information moving forward, because I think it's important to have this historic information to better plan some of these planning studies.
Yeah, it just noted a few times in the report that they struggled to model it really, really accurately to a high level because of that lack of data. And I guess just making sure that if we're going to adopt this flood study or this overlay, that we have processes in place to get the data to keep confirming or adjusting this should that need to happen into the days ahead, rather than just relying on anecdotes.
Yeah, so we've got, our flood rain gauges, we've made investments in them. We've got a system called WaterRide, which helps us model events as well. We're plugged into our disaster management team as well in QRA, and those are all elements that we can bring together. The industry is improving, so the industry's ability to gather that information, data processing improving, AI is improving, so moving forward we're in a much better place to review these. But there was a lack of information and a lack of gathering information, because obviously people are focused on responding to an event and not necessarily understanding it and measuring it.
So we've got different processes in place to what we had in 2014?
I think we're improving all the time.
Right, yeah. Cool. Thank you very much. That's all.
Councillor Patrick, Churchill, and then Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My questions were... Oh,
Sorry, I was looking over there for you.
sorry. I know we've played swap-see seats just to keep everyone on their toes in the boardroom and online. Sorry, my questions really have just been answered from the questions that Councillor McClintock has asked you, and I take great comfort from that. This is a really great piece of work. And ultimately, it is about people's lives within our community and homes, and keeping people safe and being best positioned with disasters and water runoff and things like that. So that's really just all I had to say, except for one more thing. I would love to see more AI being used in keeping all of our mapping updated as well. So that would be really advantageous for planning ahead. Thanks.
Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thanks, Mayor Matt. I had a number of questions listed here, but I think my colleagues have been able to cover most of them. I just wanted to go back to getting an understanding from this, and I agree with you, Mayor Matt. This is extremely welcome news. I mean, it's been a long time coming, and I know that there's a lot of hard work that's been done behind the scenes to get to this stage. But I think the jury's still going to be out until we hear back, perhaps from the development industry or the investment industry or residents and ratepayers, especially when it relates to insurance, because we know, and I've raised it many times before, how the Insurance Council of Australia sees this. And what's happening in other parts of the nation and the world with flooding, I just want to get an understanding, does this modelling today align with our coastal adaptation, the hazard adaptation program that we put in place? Are they in sync with each other? And that'll, subject to the answer to that might lead me to my other final question.
Niels might be able to answer this more. They are two different hazards, separate but not unrelated, obviously, given the way that water acts over land. The coastal hazards specifically speak to exactly that. This is particularly more about the riverine and overland flows and what may happen inland from that. But Niels can maybe talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think, Mike, you explained it correctly. It's there's a little bit of a difference from the coastal versus the overland, and there's different impacts. But we can maybe go and have another look at that if they want to, just to give more confidence.
Yeah, okay then, yeah. I just want to make sure that we've got that utmost confidence. And again, Mother Nature can be kind and can be cruel. As I said there before, I think the jury's still out at this stage till we hear back from the development industry, the investment industry, and as you would be well aware of this particular destination, it is a known growth destination, but it can be also limited by the parameters of what this modelling might rightfully do. and our planning scheme. So my question is, what flexibility do we have now if we adopt this modelling today? And I'm supportive of it, and I'm very supportive of the great efforts that have gone, that been put in place to date. But is there any level of flexibility when we hear back from residents and ratepayers, the insurance industry, developers, the investment industry, or have we already scoped all that out?
Do you mean to choose a lower risk scenario and less flooding? Councillors, is that?
I'm not an expert in this particular field, but you don't know what you don't know until you hear back. Why didn't we cover the national park, or why didn't we scope out whatever the case might be? Is there any flexibility if we adopt it today?
We can certainly extend the study area. As we said, we chose the 110 kilometres which most directly affected the urban catchment, and obviously that extends to some of the larger semi-rural blocks in the area as well. The value of the mapping diminishes a little the further out you go into these larger blocks, and particularly into the national park. But it's certainly something we can do. To your point about the coastal hazards, hopefully in some of the maps that are being scrolled through just now, you can see that the coastal areas are not excluded from the study. So
yep.
The areas are included and they're not excluded, but obviously the way the water interacts from a coastal event versus a riverine event will be opposite. So they are bright red on some of the coast is bright red, and some of the modelling here is certainly included.
Okay then. So I've just got one other little quick question, is this modelling today, is there a grandfather approval that sits in place inside this modelling that, or perhaps on the parameters of the modelling that will now exclude them from doing anything, from any development?
Sorry, can I just ask to rephrase the question? Is that there's potential approvals?
Is there any grandfather approval that sits in place at the moment that will be affected, that says that they can't do anything on that land now from a prior approval?
I believe not. And what this does is it should allow the appropriate mitigation and flow levels to be set for the development. That's what stopped development, is there's not been a calibrated model to tell what should be built and how it should be built, as opposed to something being built at all.
Okay, lovely. Thanks very much for that. Appreciate that.
My understanding is the biggest issue has been properties that believe they didn't flood or are caught up in an old flood study.
Yep.
This now takes that away, and there will still be properties that will flood because they will flood. And if we were to say that they weren't and then they flooded, they would be straight in here and say, you approved my low-set brick home when you knew there was a flood area. So
Exactly.
This is a great outcome for Agnes Water 7070 with 600 more properties. Now, with the data, shows that they, based on this data, won't flood. Yep. So therefore they can build something different. There'll be other properties in there that will still be impacted because they will flood. And that's the property that the property is. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That's probably one of the biggest reports I've ever read.
It was quite the attachment.
And thank you for that. That filled my weekend up beautifully. Look, just a couple of questions on it. Most of it's been covered here, but relative to the reduced levels for floor levels in buildings, does that give us a common height throughout the whole catchment area that's been mapped?
No, it'll be at lot level.
Lot by lot?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a combination of existing RLs and the flood mapping that we've seen?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say how many DAs are sitting in the back there. That's been answered there. Look, I was interested in this shared socio-economic pathway.
Yeah.
Is that really something, or did you make it up?
No, it's a real thing.
It's a real thing. been in the game a long time, I've never heard that one. My understanding of this is not relative to flooding so much as that is to frequency.
Yeah,
of flooding.
it's the impact of additional greenhouse gases being released into the atmosphere and what impact that will have on climate change, including severe weather events.
And we've picked that particular scenario. And I see Rockhampton's chosen the same one.
Yeah.
We talk about exemption certificates for certain blocks, which I'd imagine they're outside the mapped area.
Well, they'll be inside the mapped area at the moment because they'll need an exemption certificate until the maps are amended into the planning scheme.
How long is that going to be?
I'm not sure when it's scheduled for amendment. Yeah, but this will be amended into the planning scheme.
Sorry, can we bring you to the table, please?
Thank you. Sorry, yeah, to answer the question, we believe the major amendment for this will be around about the end of this calendar year, but we will use this information to issue exemptions if adopted.
Oh, okay, that's where I was driving at. So we can offer an exemption certificate now?
Absolutely, yes,
Okay.
if adopted, yes.
Okay.
Just to clarify, if I may, Mr Mayor, that's the practice that was being undertaken prior
taken
to
away.
the concerns that were raised. So it'll be, and there was quite a lot of high level of satisfaction with that process from our customers at that time.
Until we took it
So,
away.
Yes, that's right. So returning it should make it easier for people. yeah.
Absolutely. Look, most of the other stuff has been cleared up on the way through. Just interested with the difference between the coastal hazard adaptation plan compared to our flood mapping on this. Which is the greater of the impact of the two?
That's an interesting question.
Thank you.
It's not one I have an answer for. I'll take that on notice if that's okay, and we
Yeah,
can
because
talk about the comparative risks.
There's a bit of a double bunger here because when you get inundation of seawater coming in and then you've got your overland flooding, that's a different scenario altogether.
Yeah.
90 Point's a classic example.
Yeah. So it looks as though that was addressed, but that's a model that you can. It's really taking a guess on, really, isn't it?
Yeah, but the as I say, the coastal inundation in the event of a severe storm and the impact of overland flows is reflected in the mapping and the study. So it's not excluded from the study. It understands that some of the overland flow will not just come from the sky, it will come from the coast.
It's a very extensive report, and I'm happy to move the report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Move Councillor Cameron, seconded Councillor Patrick, and then I still have questions from Councillor Davis and Holzheimer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I only have one because everything else has been covered. So I see Rockhampton has taken a sort of a more different approach and they've gone down and we've gone to the extreme. Did we think about going for a lesser approach, or did we consider that and look into it and model that, or we're just going for the higher one?
Sorry, I believe Rockhampton has chosen the same one.
I thought Rocky went... was it, sorry? No, it says Rockhampton, neighbouring, they're using SSP 37.
That's ours.
Oh, is that the one we are? Sorry, I thought we were going to the 8.5.
No,
okay.
no, we were choosing that as well. The 585 we're doomed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holzheimer.
I know, different side of the room. You look a little bit different, straight on. That's not a bad thing, Mark.
Okay. Sorry, everybody.
Poor form to start with, for myself. When we were at LGAQ, and then I noticed on the, ALGA conference, and then on the agenda for LGAQ conference, there's lots of discussions about disaster management, disaster recovery, but that seems to be shifting a little bit as well to betterment programs. How does this support us for planning for betterment, the funding that we might be able to apply for, or community planning given the environmental changes we might be expecting in the future?
Sure, those are great questions. This obviously feeds into our asset planning, and certainly consideration for the stormwater network there and the opportunities to improve that and improve the flows across that. And that's one of the things that certainly we'll be looking at in terms of how that network interacts. We are obviously required to share this information with QRA, who are responsible for dealing with a lot of that funding. So that will help to inform their programs as well. So they'll take this data in and consider what may need to be, or where funding could be apportioned to this as well. So it's very much front of mind about what we do with this. Again, it's not just about the planning scheme, it's about how we look after the community and potentially improve the assets.
So it allows us to be more proactive rather than reactive with how we respond to climate change and the impact of disaster on community moving forward.
How
That's
we
great.
adapt and increase resilience, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor McClintock.
Just a quick follow-up one, sorry, to Councillor Cameron's question. For a little bit of, Councillor Churchill touched on it too, our coastal overlay, does it use the same SSP process, or is it a different process as far as that? Yeah, I've never heard of this, and I did a lot of reading. It was a lot of information, but just are we adopting, I guess that my question is, the same level of expectation or this level of risk that we can see that modelling for both of those overlays? They do approach a different ideas, I guess, of that thing, but I don't want us to be doom and gloom on one and then really optimistic on the other. They obviously, hopefully align in some way.
I think we're equally gloomy.
Equally gloomy. Oh, fantastic news. Great. No, that's all. I just, was wondering whether that SSP 3.7 is something that we use across the board, not just for this flood mapping, or is that something that we use have set a standard on?
There's slightly different studies in the way that they behave because of the way that the Australian, the ARR, Australian Rainfall something or other, bear with me, the standards that they require an SSP to be undertaken,
right,
whereas the coastal hazards are more less model-based and more reality-based.
Okay. Right. Oh, interesting. Thank you.
Excellent. Do you want to talk to the chairs? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it is interesting, and it gets confusing because of all the different studies. But yeah, the coastal adaptation management plan, that's very much also modelling what's happening now in 2060 and 2100. Yep. So I guess it was more, the way I saw it was more about, our infrastructure as well. It wasn't necessarily all focused on planning, although there's a lot of planning in it. But this flooding, we talk a lot about the flooding, the flood studies. While we talk about private development and houses, it's very central to where we will like to put our infrastructure in the future. So, and that is feeds onto a lot of, I guess, the planning and where we're going to be investing in the future as to how we safeguard our, especially water infrastructure, sewage, and different pieces of buildings and from libraries.
I think as well, if I can add, and it may help to describe the difference between the two things. The drainage study is about one-off weather events. Mm-hmm. Coastal hazard is about the continuing impact of rising sea levels as opposed to a short one event scenario.
Exactly.
So this is modelling these rain dump events that we're talking about, and whereas what we're looking at in the coastal area is what happens as our sea levels rise, and how do we either adapt or retreat from that.
And I guess it wasn't so much about the plans and their intended outcomes. It was more about that foundational information we're using to get to both of those plans, where this does state, a certain, 3 degrees by 2070, 4 degrees by 2100. I don't want us to be in a position where we're using one set of data to create this plan and then a different set of data to create a coastal plan where we're
it's a really good point.
Making sure they align, not so much what they do as an outcome, but making sure this has some really in my opinion, it was actually some really clear data as to what we were assuming and what we weren't. And I do like this as far as clarity around what we're expecting and what we're telling people that we're expecting. Just want to make sure that aligns with what we're previously doing in our coastal plan, is I guess where that question came from.
Yeah. And just to add, I see all of these, well, I guess it would have been great to have some of that a bit earlier to make sure that we had a bit more clarity with people when it comes to building and, well, ourselves as well. But is it right to say that now people wouldn't have to do sometimes their own flood studies because we have this in place for them?
They'll no longer be required to do
That's right. So, which is, I guess the specifics. No, it's not just the understanding the insurance situation is separate, but they're more clear. And going back to the insurance situation, whether we are negative or positive is not necessarily what I see as important. What I see is the more certainty. So then if you, an insurance company might say, oh yeah, well, you're in a flooding prone area, but if you build your house in this way or that way, then your premiums don't need to rise, or they might be different, or et cetera, et cetera. And that also gives the insurance industry more tools to talk to government about what needs to happen in that space. So yeah, it's great. Hopefully, I'd like to see if anyone is watching in Agnes, if they have any feedback. I'm sure you'll make us aware. But yeah, it'd be great to sort of monitor it, so how it's been implemented. So the bad stories, we always hear them, but the good ones we like to hear as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think you'll hear from them.
I think they'll be happy. Well, I hope so. But the work's been done based on feedback from that community, and it certainly helps our planning scheme. And it's very great to hear Kimberly say that we use, as of this adoption, which I feel like is going to be passed unanimously in a second. But I just want to touch on insurance for a second. Don't for a minute think that the Insurance Council will reduce premiums based on this, because the Merway Shire has built a levy and proven, based on recent flooding events, that their town doesn't flood anymore. But they're still charged as if they do. So I was going to say corporate greed, but I shouldn't. So I won't.
I'm glad you didn't.
I was going to, but I wouldn't. But thank you. Councillor Churchill, question before I put the motion?
No, I agree with you. I agree with you, Mayor Matt, but there's also another aspect to it as well. It's when the insurance companies, albeit the national insurance industry, won't insure anybody based on a statutory document.
Yeah.
That's the concern that I have, and I've had that for a long time, but it's the way it is. But
they can
anyway.
use real life data to reduce premiums in places in Queensland right now that have put expensive infrastructure in place to prove that they no longer flood, and they either A, can't get insurance, or B, can't afford the insurance, even though they no longer flood. So
Yep.
I have little confidence in what the insurance industry will do with this. But sorry, Councillor Cameron, last question, then I'll put the vote.
Thank you. With your insurance companies, they have a very simplistic way of looking at things, and that's your postcode.
Yeah.
So, and I've did this exercise where I thought that my insurance company was charging me too much. As it turned out, they weren't. Where I went to a few insurance companies, and as soon as you put in your postcode, 4680, they say we can only offer you contents insurance. That's how basic it is. Yeah. Just other little comment I want to make too, and I noticed in this report they gave you clarity on what 1 in 100 year means, as opposed to 1 in 500, which is actually a 1% chance over 1 year. And I'd like to explain that to my partner, which I have difficulty in doing, but it's in writing now.
It's in writing now. Well done. That'll help. Dinner at your house tonight. Move Councillor Cameron, seconding Councillor Patrick for the officer's recommendation. No further questions or comments. Put the motion. All in favour. Motion is carried unanimously, and thank you. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Nels. We'll move to G4.3, which is the e-scooter trial in Agnes Water 1770. I'll hand over the General Manager of Community and Lifestyle, Kylie Lee, and welcome Felicity to the table as well. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I have Felicity with us this morning, Manager of Gladstone Entertainment, as we work through all of that. Start again. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I have Felicity Barker with us this morning, Manager of Arts and Entertainment, and just looking for your strategic advice around our proposed trial for e-scooters in Agnes Water and 1770. Just a little bit of background. I know it's contained in the report, but for the benefit of those online, Council did an expression of interest process to deliver a trial for e-scooters in the Agnes Water and 1770 area. One submission was received for that particular EOI process, which was from Bird Rides Australia Pty Ltd, combining my words. We proceeded with the expression of interest prior to inviting written tenders, just to explore our options that we had available to us. A closed tender process was then undertaken, and Bird Rides Australia did participate in that tender process. The trial, just to be clear, was to include concept map layouts of the area for e-scooters in Agnes and 1770, the type of e-scooters, the fleet size, the geofencing controls, charging requirements, the data that would be shared, the user interface, storage and collection, which is really important, and compliance. Whilst we were out working that body of work, we've finally now been advised that Bird Rides Australia Pty has been dissolved in Australia and no longer is a viable option for council. In addition to the availability of supplier, councillors would be aware that there have been movements in the e-scooter industry. There have been several safety regulations that have now been implemented since we proceeded originally with the expression of interest and the subsequent tender. And there is also more availability of those vehicles in the Agnes Water through small businesses. We're here today as the formal resolution we have on our books for council cannot be outworked. So I seek your guidance as to how we move forward. Thank you.
Happy to move the officer's recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Oh.
Birds Australia were never ever committed to their EOI. And I've raised it before with all my research that I did. So Bird Rides Australia have flown the coop and they can go back to where they belong. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Councillor Churchill, for the officer's recommendation. I'm not going down so easily, but okay. A seconder for that recommendation. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to lose this argument. Yeah, Councillor Cameron can second it. I'm happy to accept that you can't outwork the resolution. I'm still not convinced that with all of those things that you set in place, that we still couldn't have, like, there was an option there and there was a recommendation too, which clearly is not going to get up there, but I just want the community to know that that's my position. It would be that we still go out to an EOI and see if someone else is interested, and not just for Agnes Water 1770, which is where I wanted it as well, in Tatham Sands too. There's things in place in Cairns where you just can't leave the scooter anywhere. If you try and leave it there, you'll get getting paid. You'll still have to pay for it. So you can put measures in place around the geofencing and the storage and the collection and all the rest of it to make sure that they don't become a community nuisance. Plenty of councils have been doing this for years, or communities have been doing this for years, and we could learn from those, and Cairns is a good example of how they're managing it. Bundaberg is the same, and what they do in Bargara, you can't drive them up one of the streets there, they stop. I think we could do that as well, but clearly there's not a lot of support for e-scooters, and I'll be quiet now, but I think we should have given it another go. Bird aren't the only operators.
And then please be mindful, there are some local governments that have actually withdrawn the approvals for e-scooters. So I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation, and if there's any consideration for it to come back, that's something that we need to talk about at greater length about what, where, how, and we need to also understand why some of the local governments in other parts of Australia have withdrawn their support for these scooter companies, e-scooter companies, based on the need for safe infrastructure, for signage, and the list goes on. But I understand where you're coming from, Mayor Matt, and I'm sure some of my colleagues perhaps feel the same. But if we're going to consider it again, I'd rather it come back as a separate agenda item later on, and then we can talk about all the intricacies rather than talking about option 2 today. That's just my opinion.
I'll go along with it. I can count. one thing I've learned in this boardroom. Councillor Wagner?
Yeah, thank you. Look, New South Wales, and I'm saying that, you know, we are the Maroons and we're better, but I shouldn't say that because I'm from New South Wales, but they've banned them. And you only have to go down to places like the Sunshine Coast and see how dangerous it's getting. And the ones, even adults, are not wearing helmets and what have you. And you walk along the footpath, and honestly, in one walk, I got nearly bowled over 3 times by people on them as well. I also think it's just another cost burden on council too, and they're an eyesore. You only have to go to some of our neighbouring councils that have trialled them, and they're everywhere. And I do get that you can house them and put things in place, providing their credit card doesn't bounce, I suppose. But yeah, look, I'm all for not going ahead with them. People, they're cheap enough now. People are selling them en masse because of the dangers, and if people want them, they can buy them. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's why you're not supporting it anymore. You've got your own. Righto.
The market has changed.
Yeah, it has. Councillor Holzheimer.
I was in Agnes recently and saw the use of e-scooters and even e-bikes, I believe they are, quite popular in that part of the region. I was concerned by the riding of them on footpaths and the lack of helmets and monitoring and safety because they were young people and at school holiday time. It was a bit, haphazard, I suppose, might be a way to describe it. So there's definitely those safety concerns. I also know that we have a thriving local business down there that it's already hiring e-scooters for people. So I think that we're better off leaving it in their hands to do this at this point in time. And similar sentiments to Councillor Churchill, happy to explore this, looking at infrastructure and everything that wraps around doing this safely, really well considered in the future. However, not for Agnes, not at this point in time. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor McClintock.
Yeah, I think this is a dumb idea from the start, but that's okay. I took the liberty of making a few phone calls to some residents down there, and actually to back up what Councillor Holzheimer has just said, the first comments that I got on both those calls was that as soon as I started mentioning scooters was about the use of them currently, and there's actually a community concern around the safety in particular and the way they're being used. There's certain areas within, and I know you can geofence, and this is all part of it, but there's certain areas that require people to use the roads because our footpath network is not there. So my concern is, and why I say this is silly from the start, is because we don't have the infrastructure in place to actually support this to be done in a safe manner, which means that even with all the fencing and all the things that we can do to have a usable system, it requires a level of safety that I'm not okay with, and use of main roads and all those sorts of things. Not to mention it's actually illegal for 12-year-olds and under to use these at all on main roads or out of the home. So there's a lot of those laws that have come into place. There's a lot of those things that are not being already followed in the use of the private ones. And I think this just compounds the problem and makes it a bigger thing that we're trying to solve rather than helping that process to become safer and more efficient for our communities across the board. The main question I guess I had in relation to this was, why did it take so long to get to here? What was the hold up in the process? Obviously, it was a decision well before 2023. At 2023, there was a decision for the tender, and we're now another nearly 3 years on or so, 2.5 years on, and now we're deciding that we don't really have the information, or we don't have the tender has actually gone bust. So
I've used finally in my
Yeah.
commentary today because it has been incredibly difficult to actually get formal advice that Bird Australia has dissolved. There's also a huge piece of work in the actions that I was speaking about before, around trying to source the concept map layout, consultation with the community, what types of e-scooters, and the fact that we were only dealing with one supplier makes it really difficult. So there is a piece of work there. Could we have done it quicker? We may have put down some other work, which we probably needed to explore at the time. But if you wanted to add to that, you can. But the availability of the provider has given us a little bit of a tackle.
During the thick of the process, there were incidences in Bundaberg, and we did consult with them initially on their learnings to, try and figure out, how did it go for them? They'd already implemented it, and what should we be learning from them? So there was quite a bit of consultation with their parks manager on that. So we got a bit of feedback to structure into what our actual key deliverables were in the tender process itself. A lot of that was around zoning, mapping, identifying that there wasn't infrastructure to go all the way up to the lookout. So there would have been restrictions on how far you could actually take the scooters. We also had quite a bit of feedback from them around it not just being... their surprise in Bargara was that it was actually helping residents get to work and not just a tourism thing. So we did quite a bit of research there, and then as the tender unfolded, we ended up having to get consultation with external procurement specialists. So that was another part of that work, and that was ongoing for quite some time, just to narrow down exactly what we would expect from Bird, given learnings from other councils on safety, zoning, and how they're being used and regulated. So it was quite a big piece of work. It wasn't simple. And then it was a bespoke contract. And then through that process, unfortunately, I went on maternity leave. And and then, we were still waiting on some feedback on that contract. So, it kind of... it unfolded into a bigger piece of work than we had expected. But it needs to go that way if we are going to look at implementing it again, because obviously there is a lot of risk.
So and that gives me a little bit of comfort to the time frames. Obviously we're making decisions today that we can't be applying them to 10 years' time when that whole situation has changed for things like this. But I guess that work that's been done, if we're going to have the conversation at a different time about this coming back, is that work stuff that we can continue to use into those processes, or is this something we have to redo all again?
No, I think that once we get to what we've already identified what our needs are as part of the tender, it would just be a matter of going through the tender process again to see who would come in and who we would attract that can deliver those key.
Right.
If I can add there, Councillor McClintock, we wouldn't go through an EOI process again. We'd go direct to tender. So that does reduce the amount
Absolutely.
of time. Yeah.
Correct. Totally agree. Could I just make a quick comment, Mayor Matt?
Yes, and then I got the Deputy Mayor. Over to you. Yes, Councillor Churchill.
Over to me?
Yep. Yes.
Oh, right, thank you. Look, I think that, just from what Councillor McClintock is coming from, is that just understanding that there is a huge number of companies that are delivering these type of e-scooters across the nation, across the world. And when we did go out to EOI, we only got one, which created that level of apprehension by the council of the day, not the dinosaurs, the council of the day, to determine appropriately why did we only get one. And the intent of the EOI, and I suppose the scope of that EOI, was to identify all the various issues. And I think sometimes timing or the longer time can be a benefit to us as we learn about the success and failures of other trials that were happening within our neighbouring local governments and across the nation. And I think this has been a good learning exercise for all of us in the decision-making progress, or the decision-making process is about, hastening slowly. I think the Council of the Day also had good intentions, but now Councillor Holzheimer has now raised a very, very pertinent point, We don't need to be in, and I agree that there's places that would welcome these, but we don't need to be in competition with our small businesses. In fact, we could probably encourage them, and they can provide feedback to us how we can improve safety within our region. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Muscat.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. I don't have a question, but I wanted to remind us of a couple of things, and it's in line with what Councillor Churchill said. I don't like to call myself a dinosaur, but yeah, I was the council of the day. There was a lot of other motivations in here to run this pilot or trial. It wasn't, we weren't committing to, it was a way of testing the use of e-scooters in our region, and we decided, in fact, that we will only do it in Agnes and Tannum and not in Gladstone, contrary to what I wanted actually too, and a number of us. Now, at the time, there was a number of motivations, one of them obviously being the fact that e-scooters were popular and everyone was trialing them at least, and they were working in many places. And they continue to work. We also, and from my point of view, we continue to try to solve a problem of transportation. So we can talk about e-scooters for hours, but there's a reason why we were looking at different strategies to try to ease the lack of transportation that we have in our communities. So in Tannum and in well, let's leave Tannum aside, but in Agnes, it was more of a tourism situation. And in Gladstone, it's definitely a lack of public transport. So that was always in the front of my mind, to see how we could actually supply another method of transportation for people that don't have a car or people that are underage. So I'm not saying, I guess, well, kids ride their bikes as well, so compliance and all that, I mean, how people use things or don't use things is not necessarily reasons why I will stop or start doing something anyway. But at the time, we also didn't have the private operator in Agnes, which I think it's wonderful, and if anything, their success proves that that was actually a good move in the first place. But yeah, and we were also building and developing our footpaths down there, so which we are still doing. So, and it was a trial at the end of the day. So, and it was not just the transportation in Agnes. What we discussed was also parking, which we continue to discuss. So we seem to try to reframe and tackle problems differently. So we can't build, banning car parks everywhere we go. That isn't what we want to do. That's not what the community want. That's not sustainable. That's not environmentally friendly. That is just not what we want. But the problem is not the lack of parking. The problem is the lack of connectivity and different ways of getting to places. So we were trying to do that. So, and I think maybe if we revisit this, maybe we revisit this in that way, in how we improve our transportation connectivity in our communities, including Gladstone. Mm-hmm. So obviously I have younger children, so that's what I was thinking about, but that happens the same way it happens to elderly people that might not feel comfortable driving, or I guess even the reduction of traffic in our roads, so that it's all plays into the same objective, which is to have better, more sustainable transportation. So I just thought I'll put that out there. So thank you.
Thank you. I've got a mover in Councillor Churchill and a second in Councillor Cameron for the officer's recommendation. No, that's the officer's recommendation. It could be the same as option one. I have to scroll back down and have a look, but that's what's on the screen. The officer's recommendation, we abandon that resolution, which obviously we have to because it can't be outworked because that company no longer exists, and that no further action be taken due to inability to engage the sole supplier, engage in the expression of interest process to conduct a trial for e-scooters and Agnes Water 7070. Thank you. Mover and seconder, all in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Okay, let's sort of, yeah, disappointing. Well, we might, yeah, we're going to do the next one. Thank you, Mark. G, 4.4 is the monthly financial report for the period ending 30th of June 2025. Hand over to the General Manager of Finance, Governance and Risk, Mark Holmes. Mark.
Morning, Mayor. Morning, councillors. This item is your monthly financial report for essentially 30 June 2025. So this is your financial report for essentially on a management accounting basis. We're still preparing our end-of-year financial statements for the full 24-25 financial year, and they'll be prepared and available in and around September once we go through all of our accrual processes. So where we're sitting at the end of the financial year is we're actually sitting positive with respect to our forecasted operating surplus. So we had a forecasted operating surplus of 4.7 million. We are at the moment sitting at 8.2 when we prepared these statements. With significant difference there is as a result of the prepayment of the federal assistance grant, of which we received 5.2 million on the 26th of June. So that takes our total general purpose grant receipt of 15 million for that financial year. So we have essentially received 1.5 times our allocation for the 24-25 financial year. And we've got to treat that as a receipt. When we receive it, we can't accrue that. So that's noted, but we'll still receive in an operating surplus position without that, which is pleasing to note. With respect to our expenditure, we're largely on track to achieve our forecast operating expenditure position, and certainly, pleasing to note, even from a capital expenditure perspective, we're going to be very close to that 103 million. That is our forecasted position. So we have accrued $7.7 million worth of expenditure at the end of June. That's in that graph there on page 25. There's still maybe some additional accruals that come in the weeks subsequent that see us push that 103 million. With respect to our outstanding rates, pleased to report that probably for the first time as Gladstone Regional Council, we are below 2% outstanding rates at the end of June 2025, which is a pleasing result. Yeah. From a essentially sustainability ratios perspective, they are essentially where we would expect them to be, and probably no significant surprises there to call out. But happy to take questions with respect to the report.
Questions, councillors? I did have one on the Reaper, but I'll come back to it. Councillor McClintock, and then Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mine was just a little bit of clarity on something you just mentioned there. Was the obviously from the 4 million to the 8 million, roughly 4 million extra above what we'd anticipated, and you mentioned it as the prepayment. Was the prepayment 4 million? Or
the prepayment was 5.2. So that's under. We've noted that we received that on the 26th of June.
Yep.
So our net position, that's in your attached financial report,
yeah.
We're sitting at 8.2.
Yeah.
We'll have accruals that will come in for both revenue. So our big accrual for revenue that we haven't got in these figures yet is our water consumption revenue.
Right.
So we've got water consumption revenue for the second half of the year. So our water meter readers have been out and about in the community, and that will essentially the second half will go out with the essentially your rate bill.
I'd seen that.
And that'll go back into last year.
Yeah. No, that's okay. I hadn't noticed that extra was because of that. I was concerned that was going to take us backwards,
so
but
you'll
that's
note
okay.
in your rates, your net rates and utilities, that we're currently, our actual results at 182 million. We're forecast as 193. So we've still got that accrual to come back in.
Brilliant. It's good to see the right dates on the ratio table too.
Councillor Patrick.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, Mark. Just a quick question, and I hate to keep bringing this up, but it's about the overtime between budget, actual and forecast. What are the learnings from 24-25 budget that we can look at to reducing and becoming more consistent with overtime? How can we look at that?
Certainly, I think with respect to how we've adopted our budget for the next financial year, we've actually had a look at some of those areas where there has been consistent overspend and looked at resourcing in those areas to make sure that we're putting people essentially in train and putting the resources in place to actually essentially limit the amount of overtime, because essentially there was that demand there. So that demand's there, so we've increased some resourcing, particularly in that water and sewage area. We've put some additional positions in the budget, and they're in the process of being filled. Some of this area is obviously reactive in nature, and we know that in that air, water and sewage area, we've had, particularly our sewer space, we've had some significant breakdowns, and that was a result in that. We are making significant capital work upgrades in that asset at the Gladstone wastewater treatment plant in particular, to try and limit those.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just looking at our cost on legal fees, I think on page 23. 206.27% over budget on that, on legal fees. What's the makeup of that? Is there...
Significant amount of expenditure results to essentially your development, where we have gone to court matters, and we've actually gone to court. So when we actually go, we try to actually not go to court, but essentially when we are engaging our experts and essentially got court setting fees and the like, those costs add up. So the significant proportion of those relate to several development application matters.
So it's basically all appeals, is it?
Yes.
Defending the appeals?
Yep. Yes.
It's a fair old slice. Is that an uplift from what we would normally see?
Yeah, that's a significant overspend compared to where we have been in prior years.
If I may just add, one of those matters was an enforcement matter, not an appeal to an approval, and that's taken a significant amount of resources to progress. So that's unusual that we would take action of that type, of that scale, but was necessary. So it is an unusual expense we're hoping not to repeat.
No, it's a bit concerning. It's quite a substantial blowout, that.
From a budget perspective for the next financial year, we believe we essentially from both compliance and DA perspective that we essentially haven't got any matters that we notice progressing to that stage at this point. So we have reduced the budget expectation for the 25-26 financial year.
Very optimistic.
Yes.
Hope it works out.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you.
Councillor Hosmer.
Happy to move the officers' report, and congratulations to the team that have worked really hard with the community to get our outstanding rates down so low, considering we are in a cost of living crisis and there's lots of pressure on everybody in community. So well done to that team. Thank you.
Thank you. And seconded, Councillor Davis. I'll go through it with you later, Mark. The whole of life funding questions around some of these federal government grants, I don't need to go through now, but just looking at some of the numbers that percentage-wise concern me, but that's probably because maybe the grants are yet to come in.
And also the fact that that relates to the funding we received this year.
Okay.
We've added that in there as an additional line this month, because then we were getting questions that were more related to the expense than the revenue, so we'll just try to highlight that pieces. Those pieces particularly with respect to those REPA projects, for instance, where we actually had incurred and recovered that cost in the previous financial year. So there's probably a total funding piece to go in there as well.
That's a new chart, the whole of life percentage?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, I'll go through that with you at another time, but yeah, it's interesting, but I get it. 30th of June. It's a wrap-up. We'll get the final wrap-up in September. We've got a mover in a second if officer's recommendation. All in favour? Motion's carried, and we'll break for morning tea. Well, thank you, councillors, and welcome back to those online and in our gallery, to Tex and others. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is G4.5, which is the repeal of our vaccination policy. I'll hand over to the General Manager of Finance, Governance and Risk. Again, Mark Holmes.
Morning, Mayor and councillors. This item is for you to consider the repeal of the vaccination policy. The vaccination policy is currently supported by the Immunisation Corporate Standard, but was originally adopted essentially during the amalgamation process in 2009 to essentially make sure that we were providing that commitment to our employees as to how we were essentially outworking our obligations with respect to making sure that our staff was safe and we were providing the vaccinations for those people that required them for their roles, and also any commitments we were making with respect to voluntary vaccination programs. We've developed an immunisation corporate standard over the years. That started in 2013, and that has continued to evolve. Essentially, the comfort that we're trying to provide our employees originally by the policy is now essentially enshrined within the corporate standard. Therefore, it's recommended that we repeal the vaccination policy.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Mark. I have read through the corporate standard and I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation to repeal the policy. Thank you.
Thank you. As a seconder, Councillor Patrick. Mark, what does this mean for immunising community? Do we still do that?
At the moment, we do limited school programs.
Yeah,
but
school programs.
That's subject to continual contract arrangements with the state government.
So repealing this policy won't take away our ability to still do that?
Yeah, that's a separate decision. Yeah.
Okay.
This policy directly relates to our employees.
Yeah, I know. I read it inside and out, and I couldn't see it in there anyway. But I know we did that, and I just don't want to. I wouldn't support the repealing of this policy if it meant that meant we would take away from our schools program. That was not the intended outcome. That would have to come back here for another decision.
Could we take that on notice and come back to you, Mr Mayor?
Yes. Well, I don't want to support this if that's what the outcome could be. Could that be the outcome? No. Good. All right.
Not under this, but I don't believe there's a separate policy that enshrines.
There's not a separate policy.
The other piece of work. So in response to your question about whether it would come back, not necessarily, but if you were of a view that councillors wanted to have input into that, that's probably a separate conversation we can have with you.
I don't necessarily need the boardroom, but before that, any kind of decision was made to stop or potentially stop making our vaccinations available to through our schools, I'd want to know about it first. Thank you. All right. Mover and seconder. Any other questions of this one, councillors? Move Councillor Davis, second Councillor Patrick. All in favour? Motion's carried. Thank you. And thank you, Mark. Another one for you, which is G4.6, the councillor appointment to the Gladstone Area Water Board. I'll hand over to you, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr Mayor. as you're aware, Councillor essentially has an appointment to the Gladstone Area Water Board, and we had former Councillor Goodluck as your representative on the Gladstone Area Water Board. Former Councillor Goodluck has subsequently resigned, and we're now seeking a new nomination. And that nomination, we then send through to the Department of Water to go through a confirmation process. So it really is over to the boardroom to decide who they would like to put forward.
Thank you, councillors. I'd propose that we hear from the councillors that are interested in nominating for this position, one at a time, and then we can take it from there, whether there's questions or whether we and whether it goes to a vote on from there. But I'll start with, I believe, Deputy Mayor, and then we'll work our way. Councillor Wagner. And
Thank you, Mr.
Cameron.
Mayor. Yes, I am interested in the position, and I only have a couple of little sentences to say. I guess it's all. I have been representing the community since 2018 as a councillor, and over that time I built a strong understanding of the Gladstone Area Water Board's operations and its customers, especially the big industrial players. And I understand the importance of water security in our region. So I have a background in governance, risk governance, and community leadership, and I believe I can bring a steady experienced voice to the table. I know the business, and I know the people, and I understand the region, and I will respectfully ask you for your support to my nomination. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moscow. Councillor Wagner.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. I'm interested in it for a number of reasons. I have probably the least amount of committees I'm on at the moment. I'm only on 2. And I think when I ran for election and I was asked by the Mayor which ones I'd be really interested in, and I highlighted 3, of which I did end up on the Weeds Committee, which was great. But the other one was the Water Board. So this is one that I had identified, and hence why I'm probably not on some of the others, because this one was one I was really passionate about. Water security, but not only that, having this amazing resource out there that is doing more than just water too, the fish hatchery, the things they're doing to mitigate, the weeds, the feral animals and what have you, right through the Boyne Valley, working with the community, and also those networks now with Rockhampton and supporting industry in the community. I have had a lot to do with the Water Board since being a journalist in the community years ago. I actually did some contract work some time ago through the drought, so I was very aware of their strategies for managing the water resources through the drought there, and I did media releases and what have you for them back then. So I do have some of those networks already in place, and on top of that I have been a director. I have managed budgets of several $1 million in my roles in council and other, and I obviously have tertiary qualifications with 2 degrees and 3 or 4 diplomas, 3, I think, diplomas. One is management and one is business as well. Also, I have my own business, and I think that, and I respect everyone else who's nominated too, but I think given that I have got less commitments in that area so far, and this is something I'm passionate about, and I think I could be a good representative, I ask for your support in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wagner. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I'd like to do is just give a little bit of a summary of my experience in business and through the community. And I'm aware of the suggested criteria that the Water Board might be looking for somebody putting their name forward for this, and they'd be looking for some statutory and regulatory policy experience. They're looking for water industry and water engineering experience, commercial experience, project management experience, and government and stakeholder connections. Given that, I've just put together a little summary of my history. Look, I've never been involved in a government nor a semi-government board in the past. However, I have been involved in association, community and sporting boards at the executive level. I've served the Queensland Master Builders as their representative at the annual Building and Construction Awards over a 10-year period. I've been involved in Rotary boards, including President, Secretary and multiple board positions and portfolios over 30 years in Rotary. I served as a board member and president of the Claremont Golf Club over a 7-year period. I am the owner and managing director of my building and development company over a 45-year period, involved in various projects. I've been involved in joint venture housing development with Hookers and Tenry Group in Brisbane, joint venture housing and development with Cougar Developments in Mackay and Gladstone. And it was actually Cougar Developments that brought me to Gladstone. Lucky you. I've carried out housing and commercial building with the Blair Athol Coal expansion project as a principal contractor in the Central Highlands, as well as housing and development projects for Mount Isa Mines, Terry, Oak Creek Coal Underground Expansion Project as principal contractor to them. All these appointments and projects have been diverse and varied and has given me a comprehensive set of skill sets, which I believe gives me the experience would be of value to a board position such as the Gladstone Area Water Board. I am on 4 different committees and groups, which I don't believe would be that onerous on them and my duties that I can't carry out those duties as well as a director on the Gladstone Area Water Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Well, I think all 3 candidates could do the job very well, and I thank all 3 of you for putting your hand up for this very important board position. Councillor McClintock, do you have a question?
Yeah, I drink water. Love it. I would like to just get a little bit more clarification, maybe from you, Mark, and perhaps a comment from you, Mr. Mayor, around the other side, I guess, of these options here, which was the non-council nomination. What are the pros and cons? I know there's a little list there, but maybe a little bit more context to why we would not do that or do that you could provide.
I guess, yeah, so council can nominate and has nominated a community representative in the past to be your representative on the Gladstone Area Water Board, and there really is essentially no requirement that it be a councillor. So obviously there could be various reasons why you'd want a councillor for your political reasons and the like, but there's no reason to stop saying that you can't have a member of the community. In fact, there's no criteria provided other than what we've already outlined in terms of that level of experience with respect to commercial project management and the like that they're seeking.
Yeah. From my point of view, I think a non-councillor does have benefits, but the fact that there's 3 councillors interested in the role, I think that the boardroom has 3 good options to pick from, so there's no need for us to go out to the community. But we have previously had Peter Masters, who was a councillor, then stayed on the board as a council's representative, but not as a councillor, and I think we were very well served by having Peter on the board there. But with there's so much interest in the boardroom, I don't think we should be looking at really going outside the boardroom.
And I guess it's not even about whether they're capable or not.
No.
I just wanted to give us a little bit of context to what would be the pros and cons, I guess, to doing that. And it may be better for us to go into the councillor role, but removing who's running for that, why would we go outside of the boardroom and why would we stay inside as far as I've heard comments about conflicts of interest and stuff like that I'm particularly interested in.
The conflict of interest would be raised as Gladstone Regional Council is probably the single largest water purchaser of Gladstone Water Board. If we're not the largest, we'd be one of the largest. Would we, Lisa?
I'm not sure. We don't have visibility over other customer arrangements
We
to be
buy
able
a
to
lot
check
of water.
volumes.
And we pay a lot for it too. We don't buy raw water, we buy treated water, so it's expensive. So there would be times where, like as I left the room before as president of a local government Queensland, when it's discussed and it becomes a financial issue, there would be times when Gladstone Water Board would discuss Gladstone Regional Council and that councillor would have to leave the room. But I'm sure it's not every day. Councillor Churchill?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Matt. I appreciate that. And to my colleagues, I feel compromised. If you allow me,
yes.
I'd just like to, I'll ask the question at the beginning and then just give an explanation. I'd like to get an understanding or direction on what the voting process will be in relation to the appointment of the successful candidate to this such an important role, not only for the Gladstone Regional Council, but for our region. And you made comment there, Matt. I believe all candidates are certainly worthy of being directors on that board. And I've always been a strong advocate for open transparency in decision making, but I am totally opposed today to any public cross-examination of my worthy colleagues, whether it relates to their skills, their experience, their expertise, their fiscal due diligence. And I believe appropriately we either go into confidential, and I'm happy to move that, or alternatively, if you can explain to me perhaps the secret ballot process, because the secret ballot is something that is recognised in Australia as a voting method where voters can keep their identity whilst at the same time to provide that level of political privacy. And I know for a fact that the secret ballot has become very much commonplace nowadays because it removes that favour or affection, malice or ill will, not necessarily from any of my colleagues around the table, and I know they, and I have as well, the utmost respect for each other. But our aim is to avoid that unnecessary intimidation that can occur, whether it comes from the media sector, whether it comes from social media, or whatever the case might be. I would like to get a clear understanding of what the process will be in relation to the voting for the worthy candidate, because I'm happy to support, provided we get unanimous agreement. I would not like a situation where we have one against others and we've got three worthy candidates. If we can come to some consensus at the end of the day, either through confidential, because if I ask a question that might be pertinent and may expose any one of these candidates, my wonderful colleagues, to ridicule, then by public comment, I would not want that to happen. Far from it. So if you can just explain to me, please, today, in your Mayor Chair capacity, what is going to be the process in relation to voting for the successful appointee to the Gladstone Area Water Board Director position, please?
Okay. Well, I would propose that we would do it the same as we do every resolution, and that someone would move that Councillor A be appointed, that be second, we seek a seconder, that be seconded and it be voted on. If there was a majority, it's passed. If councillors would like a secret ballot, as you say, it is a form of voting, very uncommon. We don't do that very often.
No. I'm sorry, I disagree with you, Mayor, mate. It's not on. It's commonplace nowadays.
I said we don't do that very often, Councillor Churchill. I said we.
That's a sad part. That's a sad part of the Local Government Act that we currently have at the moment, is that our elected members in public life are so intensely scrutinised, and the only thing I see from this is we'll have a successful outcome on someone appointed to the Gladstone Area Board, but we'll have those who voted for and against, and that's a dangerous precedence to establish. That's just my opinion, not based on any facts. But I've read through the Local Government Act, and I still believe that there is an opportunity for a secret ballot process, and I'd be happy to move that at the end of the day, and whatever the outcome will be, I'm sure I and my colleagues will be happy to support the outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. As I said, yes, we can have a secret ballot, and the way that we would have a secret ballot is that as a mover, that we have a secret ballot on this, and you've indicated you're happy to do that. I'd seek a seconder for that. Yep, you can, yep, but I've just got to answer his question first. I'd seek a seconder. If that is passed by majority of council, then we can have a secret ballot. That the result of that secret ballot will be indicative, and we would ask the CEO, probably our governance officer and myself, I would like to see the votes. They'll be secret, but I think I'd like to know as the chair that there's a majority. If there's not a majority, we would require, say, 4 councillors voted for 1, 3 and 2. There's not a majority of council, therefore I think you need a second ballot with the least votes dropping out, and then vote again until at least one councillor has 5 votes. That might happen in the first instance. And then that would still be an indicative decision, and we'd have to come back and say this is the outcome of the secret ballot, and I'd still need a mover and a seconder for that to be accepted, and then hands would need to go up and vote for that, and councillors could still vote against the secret ballot or for it. So that if I have to get a seconder for his motion, but I'll come to your question.
My question is about the motion.
Okay, yep.
My question, leading on from Councillor Churchill's request for a secret ballot, is how do those who are putting their hand up feel about the process of it being discussed publicly for the vote, or would they actually prefer it to be a secret ballot? Because for me, it actually impacts them significantly as well in regards to the support that they have from their peers in the boardroom. So I would like to hear from them, and I hope we can do that before we second the motion from Councillor Churchill. Thanks.
Yeah, I need to get a seconder, sorry, but it can be withdrawn if he changes his mind. Is there a seconder for the secret ballot? Yep. Second, Councillor Muscat. Okay. Now, in question, Councillor Holzheimer has asked the candidates. It's not a cross-examination. I think that's a fair question. Would you prefer a secret ballot or would you not? Whoever would like to go first.
I think Councillor Churchill makes some very, very good points. I think it's sort of softening the way that we do things, and I would support it.
Thank you. Councillor Wagner?
Look, I understand where you're coming from, and it could go back and forward, and then there's assumptions and all. So I don't mind, like, tear the Band-Aid off and just vote. Like, it is what it is. I'm not going to be upset with anyone, like, take it personally. This is someone's decision. I respect that. This is democracy. So that's how I feel.
Thank you. Councillor Muscat?
I will prefer a secret ballot. I align more with what Councillor Churchill is, his intentions are. I guess, it is, the process might not be perfect, but I definitely align with his intentions for what he's proposing.
Okay. Is there any further questions or comments about secret ballot or anything regarding this item? Okay. The recommendation is that we take a secret ballot for the appointment of the Water Board position, moved by Councillor Churchill, seconded by Councillor Muscat. I'll put the motion. All in favour? 1, 2, 4, 5. The motion, all those against? The motion is carried. We'll have a secret ballot. Councillors, you were handed a bit of paper in anticipation that this might be the outcome? So do we have a conflict? No? You'll just vote for the candidate you like. Councillor Churchill will text the CEO to keep his vote confidential. I still would like to see the ballot as the chair, but I will obviously not see Councillor Churchill's unless it's a casting vote. I won't collect them, but we might just pause the live stream for 30 seconds and we'll be back with the outcome of that. Oh, we'll have to adjourn. Can we adjourn the meeting for about a minute or two? Can I get a mover, please? Move Councillor McClintock, seconded Councillor Holzheimer. All in favour? We'll be back. Thank you, councillors. The CEO and a Manager of Governance and I counted the votes, and there's the outcome is that the Deputy Mayor will represent Council on the Gladstone Water Board by the indicative vote. If that is supported by the boardroom, I would need a mover and a seconder to support that ballot. Thank you. Move Councillor Holzheimer, second Councillor Davis, that Deputy Mayor represent Council on the Gladstone Water Board. Is there any further conversation, discussion? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Carried. And over to you, Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted to thank, I mean, you know, we all worthy of this, and I would have been more than happy to if you would have been picked. So thank you, Chris, and thank you, Michelle.
All right, councillors, the next item on the agenda is G4.7, which is attendance at the Australian Cruise Association Conference. I'll hand over to the Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The report's fairly self-explanatory. Request from Councillor Davis to attend this conference as introduced. Councillor Davis is obviously our representative of Council on the GAPDL and aligns with a lot of her interests that she advocates for Council. So seeking your endorsement of this request.
Thank you. Move Councillor Holzheimer. Seconded Councillor Wagner. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Churchill.
No, very keen to support the motion. I was putting my hand up in advance.
Okay, all right. All in favour. Is that you and putting your hand up in advance as well, Simon? We have a question too. All in favour. Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor. It was. Councillor reports. We don't have any written council report, but you have one that you would like to table, Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just would like to officially table the communique from the National General Assembly, which was held a few weeks ago, which Councillor Holzheimer and myself, as well as you and other staff members attended. So I'd just like to table that.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have that.
No worries. Thank you.
Recognise those words very well. Thank you. That's tabled. We'll include it in the minutes. Any other councillor reports? Excellent. No further council reports, no urgent business, no notices of motion, no confidential items. Declare the meeting closed at 11:35 a.m. Thank you for your attendance.